And I have to admit myself, I've always been mesmerized and even a little bit frightened of her. Like I said, the first exposure I ever had to her was through the Mommy Dearest movie. I think I was probably 12 or 13 when I watched that movie, and she scared me, frankly. I was just like, who is this woman? I would not want to cross her. But again, I've realized that she is just so much more than what has been portrayed of her in the media over the years. If I was in an airport gift shop looking at this book, I would be like, yeah, I'm taking this book on the plane with me. This is awesome. I mean, this woman was the epitome of Hollywood stardom, Hollywood glamour back in the day. She's a classic Hollywood movie star. She was always impeccably dressed. She spoke well. She always had the demeanor. She always had the persona. And those old Hollywood stars, they were basically the original influencers. I'm excited to share it with you guys. So the back of the book reads, and I'll hold it up for you as I read it. It is incredible. You simply must read My Way of Life, the most wonderfully outrageous lifestyle tips from Crawford herself. And that's a quote from Vanity Fair. And then it says, from Grand Hotel to Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, Joan Crawford played some of the finest parts Hollywood had to offer, establishing a reputation as the most spectacular diva on the silver screen. Even when the cameras quit rolling, her life never stopped being over the top. In My Way of Life, a cult classic that was first published in 1971, Crawford shares her secrets. Part memoir, part self-help book, part guide to being fabulous, My Way of Life advises the reader on everything from throwing a small dinner party for 18 to traveling abroad to getting the most out of a marriage. Featuring tips on fashion, makeup, etiquette, and everything in between, is an irresistible look at an era when movie stars were pure class, and Crawford was at the top of the heap. Sounds pretty good. Joan Crawford has always been one of the original and most famous old Hollywood movie stars of all time. And no matter what you know or what you might think you know about her, no one can doubt that she is a Hollywood legend. Her story is fascinating, even almost 50 years after her death. I thought it was really important to give you some backstory about Joan Crawford, who she was, where she came from, before we get into the details of the book. So in my research, I found that it was very interesting that over the years, the actual date of her birth has been debated, and it's actually never been proven because there's no birth certificate that's been available for her. Some government records indicate 1908, but it's generally accepted by most of her biographers that she was born Lucille LeSueur in San Antonio, Texas on March 23rd, 1906. Her father abandoned her and her mother as an infant, and she had a brother who was 3 years older. Her mother, by all accounts, didn't really seem to want her or even know what to do with her, and as a result, she grew up in a series of boarding schools where she basically raised herself in sometimes harsh and abusive conditions. While she was at these schools, she worked manual labor type jobs, I guess in exchange for room and board. And she was doing maintenance and cleaning upkeep type of jobs at these schools, basically to keep a roof over her head. Because of this, Joan became extremely self-reliant, and she realized she couldn't count on anyone but herself. This seems to be at the heart and the genesis of her work ethic and determination to succeed despite the odds, and she herself has claimed over the years that she was a self-professed perfectionist, and it came from her humble beginnings where she was striving to constantly do better and be better. Her biographer, Bob Thomas, even said that Joan's childhood made Marilyn Monroe's own well-documented childhood, quote, look like Rebecca from Sunnywood Farm, end quote. So that's pretty crazy. And Joan herself was quoted in an interview later in life, and she said, I worked my way through St. Agnes Academy, and then I worked my way through Rockingham Academy, from 9 years of age to 13, waiting on tables. I never went beyond the 6th grade, and that was one of my hang-ups. I read that and I'm thinking, 9 years old, no mother, you're working in a boarding school to keep a roof over your head by cleaning, scrubbing, and waiting tables. I mean, think about that. That is crazy. Ever the Hollywood legend while she was alive, Joan was best known for her fierce independence and her intensity as an actress. When she first arrived in Hollywood in 1924, in the silent era of movies, she signed with MGM Studios, where she was just another background dancing Hollywood studio system actress. But eventually, she caught the eye of the right people at MGM. And with her hard work ethic and determination to succeed, and some speculate via way of the casting couch, she eventually gained more recognition and landed better starring roles in the 1930s. And she continued to build a name for herself, and she starred along screen legends like Clark Gable, Spencer Tracy. And for the remainder of the 30s and into the early 40s, she seemed on top of her game and almost untouchable. She was one of the queens of Hollywood, the reigning queens of Hollywood. As we all know, back then, and even to some degree now in Hollywood, was not an environment that was really kind to actresses, especially as they aged. And almost 2 decades after signing with MGM, it appeared that her own star was fading. She was getting older, and in 1943, MGM unceremoniously decided to terminate her contract. It was said at the time that the parting was mutual, but it was well known within Joan's private circles that she was devastated by the termination of her contract at MGM. And she took the parting particularly hard, especially as she left with zero recognition, zero fanfare of all that she had done, everything that she had contributed to the success of that studio. So basically, her sense of betrayal ran pretty deep. But never fear, you cannot keep Joan Crawford down. She eventually recovered and signed with Warner Brothers Studios that same year, 1943, and she picked herself up, dusted herself off, and 2 years later, she became the ultimate comeback kid when in 1945, she scored a Best Actress Oscar for her work in the film Mildred Pierce. And throughout this entire time, she always maintained a reputation in Hollywood as being this kind of salt of the earth type of personality, genuine, down to earth, the consummate professional. She was someone who recognized the power of hard work and determination in order to achieve success in life. And by her own accounts and those who knew her best, including her lifelong employees, her friends, her ex-husbands, she was married 4 times, by the way, directors, fellow actors of her generation, and her own adopted children. They all detail how, over the years of her life, she strove for excellence in everything she did. She demanded the pursuit of personal perfection and accountability, not only in herself, but in those around her.